Well, this year I've been doing these little mini-series on the power. I started off with the power of allow and the power of being. And today I want to start this little mini-series on the power of action. The power of action. And these powers, they're not independent. It's like, okay, Paul talked about allow. Then there's this power of being as if they're separate. Now there's the power of action. But really, the power of all these is to incorporate them all together. To hear about them and to understand them in a way that I can use them in my life, all at the same time, not one independent of the other. And why do we want to do that? What about this power that I've been talking about? Well, the reason we want to use the power of allow, the power of being, the power of action, is so that we're living our life with a sense of freedom, with a sense of ease, with a sense of contentment, with a sense of joy. That's the whole purpose of it, is to do that. And so when I was talking about the power of allow, remember it was about the power of surrendering, the power about accepting things as they are, the power of being in the flow of life, and the power of allow also had to do with prayer and meditation, of putting ourselves at ease, The power of being had to do with, I talked about some of these foundational ways of how we bring ourselves to life, how we show up, not just that we show up. And I talked about appreciation. First of all, I talked about humility, authenticity, curiosity, and mindfulness. Those were the four kind of basic ways of showing up to life, of how to show up to life. And now I want to talk, like I said, about the power of action. And really, it makes sense that the power of action follows the power of allow and the power of being, because the power of allow and the power of being are really like how and who we are internally at a soul level. Okay? And the power of action is how we manifest that, how we show it to the outside world. And so the power of action follows the power of allow and the power of being. It follows that easily. And like I said, the power of action is really kind of this outpicturing of who and how I am, right? We even have something we say all the time: actions speak louder than words. Like we really know somebody, or in the Bible it says, by your fruits shall you be known. How you are in the world, what you look like, how you bring yourself there, that's really what it's all about, right? That's really how we know someone. But the action is the manifestation of that. Well, there's this great quote, and I'm sure some of you have heard it before. A lot of times it's associated with or given credit to Goethe, who was a German philosopher, but it's really more likely, if you do some research on the internet, more likely done by William Hutchinson Murray, and it goes like this. This is about action, because action has a power all its own. Here it goes: until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans: that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have arisen. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you can do, or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. You see, action has an energy all its own. And just taking one step, just saying it out loud, just beginning it. This quote says, and providence comes right in. I would say the entire universe lines up with you. To just begin, to just take that step. Then things happen that could not have happened before, that you would not even be aware of up until that point. A few weeks ago, Kay and Kim and Fran and I had a meeting about the Earth Day table that we'll be setting up. And you can kind of feel the excitement start to zzz, that little zzz going on. And we're exchanging ideas and everything, right? They're all smiling because they know, that's what happened there, sitting at that table at Starbucks. right? Because we commit, we're like, yeah, let's do this. And pretty soon, like I mentioned to you before, this idea popped out, as if it popped out of the universe and said, oh!
Flash meditation.
Flash meditation! Flash meditation, like, where did that come from? You know, because we had begun, because we had taken the step to get together, because we had committed in that moment, things came to us that could have never come to us maybe otherwise. That's what it means by providence moving. Atoms and molecules and energy and vibration begin to happen that otherwise could not have happened. And that's the power of action in itself, the power of taking a step. And the first step toward action is commitment. Right, is to commitment. And commitment means to decide to do something, to decide, to have an intention. That's really what it's about. The power in action is the intention behind it, is the feeling behind it. And the feeling behind that flash meditation was sizzle, 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 sizzle. Right? That's what it is. You can feel it. You can feel what that is. It's the most powerful action. And the most powerful action we can have is one that is aligned with our Dharma. Remember when I did this series about Dharma? Dharma means simply what we are here to do and be. When my decisions align with who and what I am here to do and be, that is powerful action. Because here's the truth. Just because you can do something, just because you have the skill for something, or worse yet, if you are guilted into something, not so much. Not so much. That's not what it's about. It doesn't mean that we should be doing that. We should be making conscious decisions, not just doing it because we can. You know, I did that recently, a couple of years ago, and Renee was behind me too. You know, you should be on the board of our HOA because they were doing these things that I knew about. That was not the right decision for me. I stood a year and then I was done. You know, that was not going to work. Just because you can do it doesn't mean it's yours to do. If we understand what our Dharma is, what we can say yes and no to, then we can use action powerfully. Meaningful action, action aligned with Dharma, action aligned with intention and awareness, action born out of this power of allow and the power of being. That's powerful, and that's what allows you to say yes or to say no and to feel the exact same sense of freedom in either answer. Are you hearing what I'm saying? The exact same sense of freedom, whether you say yes or whether you say no. But that doesn't always happen for us, does it? Sometimes we feel wrangled into saying yes, don't we? Or we are afraid to say no. Those two small words, yes and no, have caused us all, and I'm going to project that on you, have caused us all anxiety and resentfulness at some time during our life. Why is that? Why are we afraid to say yes? You know, sometimes I think it's because we think that every time we're asked a question, or maybe when we're discerning for our own selves, that we need to answer that right away. We need to answer it right away. Somebody says blah, 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 and you're like, okay, yeah, I'll do that, I'll help. And the immediate time you turn, you're like this, right? You don't even turn, you just turn away and you're thinking, I didn't want to say yes to that. Immediately. Well, let me give you permission, right this minute. There is hardly a decision, yes or no, that you have to make where you have to make it immediately. It is rare that it is a life or death situation, rare that it is life or death that it requires you to immediately say yes or no. That's the truth. You have permission. To say, for instance, one time Renee and I were having our palms read by Connie Worth. And so one of your palms has to do with your professional life and one has more to do with your personal life. And I don't know much about palms, but this is what I remember about the reading. And so Connie was reading Renee's palm about her personal life and said, maybe some of you will believe this or not. I kind of laughed at first, but said that Renee is a people pleaser. And But it was true. It's true. Renee has a hard time saying no in the personal life. Now at work, those gals that she works with and guys, yeah, she has no problem saying no to them. But she had a problem saying no. And Connie said, "Listen, I know that's an issue you have. Here, I'm going to give you this because sometimes it's hard to say no. Here's a word, and I'm going to give it to you. You can share it. You can use it." Connie said, "Just say this. I couldn't possibly. I couldn't possibly." And what are they going to say? "Yes, you possibly could." No. You just say, "I couldn't possibly. I couldn't." Right, Renee? I don't know. She hasn't used it recently. At least not with me. I couldn't possibly. Or how about this? Just, "I'm not sure. Let me get back to you." Sometimes maybe you use that. But like in that moment, you say, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure that's good for me. I'm not sure that's good for me." Like we don't have to answer that right away. We don't have to. Or, "I couldn't possibly. I couldn't possibly." Now, all of this is excluding from the fact when I ask you to do something at Spiritual Soul Center. That's the only exception. No, I'm just kidding. You know that. But we fear. We're afraid to say no. We're afraid to say no. We're afraid to say yes sometimes to someone who's asking us to step out, maybe outside of our comfort zone. Maybe we're afraid because we don't want to fail, or we don't want to be made fun of. And so we're afraid to say yes. We've lost that confidence, right? So we're afraid to say yes sometimes, just like we're afraid to say no. Or maybe we just haven't aligned our answer with our Dharma, with who and what we want to be. Sometimes that's the case, because there's some things I'm doing in my life right now that on the surface I'm like, "Oh no, I really don't want to do that." Like, I'm going to physical therapy still for my knee. And I'm doing this thing called dry needling. So she's putting needles in me and it hurts and all that. I'm like, I don't want to do it. Like, I really don't want to do it. But is that the truth? The truth is I really do want to do it because it's making a difference for me. It's getting me better. I mean, she is helping me tremendously. But on the surface, you want to say, "No, I do not want to be doing that." But I really do. And so it takes a minute to pause and say, am I just being impatient with myself? Am I not being true to who I really want to be and what I want the result to be? The same thing can be said, and I've used this example here before. One time I was going to a funeral and I said to Renee, "I really don't want to go to this funeral." I mean, who wants to go to a funeral? Right? It's not the most pleasant thing all the time. But then and she said, like, "Well, then why don't we not go?" And I'm like, "Oh." All right. Then I had to think about it a little bit. And what I thought was, I really do want to go because I want to be this person who shows up for other people. I want to be this person who shows up, who gives my time in that way. I want to be that person. And so instead of saying I don't want to go, I did want to go, but it took me a minute to get in line with who and what I really want to be. Saying yes and saying no. Saying yes and feeling the freedom in yes. Saying no and feeling the exact same way, freedom in saying no. According to who and how I want to be, at my soul's depth, at the depth of why I'm here and who I'm here to be. There's another pair of words, a short pair of words that I want to share with you that kind of relates to the yes and no thing, and that is this. Speak up or not. Speak up or not. This is the yes and no thing. Speak up or not. It seems very simple. It seems like we should easily be able to determine if we should speak up or not. But listen to this, and we just talked about this in our book group actually on Saturday, is if I am choosing not to speak up because I might be embarrassed or I might be judged by someone else by speaking my truth, is that really giving me a sense of freedom? Do I really feel good about not speaking up? If I'm trying to keep the peace, if I'm deciding that, well, I just going to, stay in my own little four walls, my own little tent, my own little place, and I don't want anybody to know really what I think about that. Does that feel like a sense of freedom? Not really, huh? If I'm not speaking up because I've decided that it's my time to listen, that I want to understand something better, that maybe I want to understand a different perspective, maybe it is the time not to speak up. To speak up and just to talk, to fill space, is that freedom? You know, the Bible says the noisy gong and the clanging cymbal. If I'm just talking to talk, to blah, 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 blah. You know, does that give me that sense of freedom? To speak up or to not speak should be according to how it makes me feel for me. The feeling of freedom. And the other thing is, and I've shared this here before, it's just a reminder, when I speak, is it true, is it kind, is it necessary? Is it true, is it kind, is it necessary? Do I feel the freedom in it to share what it is I want to share, to speak up, to speak out? So this week, it's pretty simple. As we start off this action, action really starts with decision making, with deciding, with making the commitment, with intention, with knowing before speaking, with knowing who and how I want to be before saying yes and no. And so that's what this week is about, I hope you'll consider. To say yes when I mean yes, and no when I mean no. To speak up when I feel that freedom. To say, to be still and to be quiet when that feels like freedom in me. And that's how we decide to say yes, to say no, to speak up, to not. Yeah? So let's go into our meditation this afternoon with those simple thoughts, those simple words, those short little words of wisdom. To check our own selves. Am I saying yes and feeling freedom? Am I saying no and feeling that same freedom? Do I speak up and feel free and unencumbered? Do I stay silent and feel the freedom in that as well? So I invite you to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out as we spend these few moments together. Simply breathing in and breathing out, being aware. I am not fully healed. I am not fully wise. I am still on my way. What matters is that I am moving forward. A real sign of progress is when we no longer punish ourselves for our own imperfections.